Anna, first of all, I would like to welcome you to the show. This is the Research Labs podcast.
Thank you for having me. This will be the first podcast I ever filmed. Kind of exciting. Also hope I don't do a bad job. So,
How about you briefly share, how you stumbled upon product design? Like, what was that first idea that, I could actually do this? And then how did you figure out that, okay, there is a first idea and then there is a lot of work in the middle? And then there is this point when you are like, oh, you know what? I am actually good at it.
yeah, so I actually started off doing graphic design. So I think I mentioned that first chat that there was like a design program in my high school, kind of did that, got an introduction briefly to user experience, like in other ways, but it wasn't packaged as product or user experience. And then did graphic design for 4 years and then realized it was something I wanted to do. Say that in university, and then going into university, there was like interactivity classes, and I was like, oh, like UX. Kind of got introduced to the world of user experience and product, and realized how large it was and how interesting it was. And there's a bunch of projects I had to do that was kind of surrounding those topics. Um, and so as I started to venture more into that in school, and kind of seeing my peers as well do it, I was like, oh, this is like kind of really interesting and sort of also a viable career as well, because I was sort of really real kind of lost at that point in terms of what a design career could look like for me. Um, and then so I started building up my portfolio in product, and then had my first internship in IBM. And then after that whole 8 month experience, and then working at a few other fintech ed tech startups, and now currently being at Coinbase as a product design intern, I realized that, hey, I guess I'm not like awful at that. And it's like a good, viable career, and it's something that I'm interested in. So that's sort of my journey since then. And the switch would be from second year as a student going into the workforce as an intern. That's when I realized, hey, um, it's definitely something I would like to pursue further. So,
So, I was checking out your portfolio and
hmm
I think
thank you.
it's very well organized. Like it's very easy to go through. I'll link I'll link it in the description. Yes. So anyone
Okay,
who wants to check
plug.
it out.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. It was very organized, right? And I think there was a, uh, Immuno. I think Immuno was the app I really dig deeper into, where you can really track your vaccinations and immunizations, I believe. Yes. So, and I would say I found it fascinating because, lot, many parts of our daily lives are getting digitized day by day. So I really wanted to understand, was it like a client project or was it like a self project that you did on your own? Like how did the idea of Immuno came up?
Oh, it was, that's definitely, first of all, to clarify, it's a student portfolio. So a lot of the projects on there are definitely more student work. And second, it's definitely a group project. So would not have been able to do a project on that scope without the other like five group members. Um, it was definitely like it was a product that was sort of assigned during school. But you could take it into whatever you get, like sort of like healthcare as a direction, and then we took it into whatever direction we wanted. And it was sort of created at the height of the pandemic, so I guess immunization record tracking in Canada, that's where I'm based, made sense. And that's where that came about.
So let's say you were given the topic of healthcare, right? So how do you go from having the idea, oh, let's do something in healthcare, to actually figuring out a very specific problem because it's a very specific app that you're trying to build. So how do you get to a point where it becomes that specific? Like I do understand, you do customer interviews and things like that, but it's always kind of, it's kind of out there when you start on the journey. So how does that journey look like?
For sure, I think in terms of our student project, I can speak specifically to this one case study. We sort of just did like a brain map, like looked at healthcare as one giant sector, and then branched out, see whatever possible ideas we could have tackled into since there. So very like rudimentary things that everyone would do, like a brainstorm, brain mapping session. And then while doing that, we also looked at a lot of current issues in Toronto in our location specifically. So anything that came up in healthcare, which was pretty prominent at the time, especially, height of 2020. Um, and then just combining the news and combining our brainstorming session, seeing whatever current existing problems are existing in the healthcare sector. We saw an issue specifically in immunizations where a lot of people were under immunized, and that tying into the pandemic, we thought that immunizations was a good sort of specific section to look into within healthcare. And then search more deeply into the problem, seeing whatever issues currently there are in Canada, and then that's kind of how we developed our problem statement since there. So it's a lot of like searching for the problem, um, and like seeing what or existing problem that exists and seeing what kind of solution we can provide. So
So I try to define coming up with problems as hypothesis generation. Like on your own, you have to kind of create a hypothesis, and then you go out there talking to people, trying to collect data to see if this makes sense or not, if it's actually true, or you're just fooling yourself.
yeah, exactly. Can be manufacturing problems.
Yeah. So could you share, like you definitely shared that you looked at the news and you looked at the data and the problem around to come up with hypothesis, right? Could you share a little bit in detail about how that process would look like?
Yeah, so for immuno specifically, which once again disclaimer is student project, like many areas student group. Um, Once we collected a bunch of news articles which were saying that like a lot of children and people were under immunized because of taxing immunization process in Canada, like it's very analog and hasn't been sort of digitized, and even digitized processes like aren't really widely adopted. So we looked at that problem space and found an opportunity, which basically you look at the problem space, you identify a bunch of problems, and then think of areas and opportunities which could potentially become solutions and features in the application. So we knew we wanted to tackle this as a sort of web application or like a mobile application. And then through that lens, looked at the problem as well, if that answers your question. But yeah, it's a lot of brainstorming and then looking at the problem and then coming up with hypotheses, as you said. But then also we did user testing sessions as well on a limited scale. Obviously, it's a student project, but to also just like validate some of our concerns. Because again, like when you get too deep into it, you could just be like playing with yourself. So yeah, we did some user testing sessions within a demographic that we wanted our app to target, and then validate our concerns, and then moved on from that stage to the next. So.
When you're working as a student in a student project, you pick up on a lot of things which are very, let's say, subtle. So do you find similar cultures when you're working with IBM or with Coinbase, or it's a very different experience?
Honestly, I found that school theoretics like definitely don't apply, apply as much in the workplace. Um, like at IBM, it was it was definitely like there wasn't like the standard sort of traditional design process you had to follow. There are certain parts that obviously you apply your learning in school that helps. But it was very much sort of like whatever strategy the team has already adopted, you learn to adopt yourself and apply that to whatever that means on your work. And at Coinbase specifically, I think it's also pretty much the same. Like there's also sort of like a project given to you. So you're the project, like the problem statement, whatever is kind of already solved for you. And then, especially as an intern. But then afterwards, there's a lot of design research and a lot of teams that you can work with to sort of validate those issues and validate the work that you've done, which I really like because there's like resources to help you do that. But definitely, I've noticed that in my work experience so far, I've never exactly followed the design process like step by step, rigidly, which is why I also think in the interview process, like a lot of employers would look for more of how you think, in depth rather than like how strictly you follow the standard design process. So yeah.
And do you feel that there is a lot of room to, let's say, come up with new ideas and experiment, or is it not very open and free, according to your experience so far in a big company like IBM or Coinbase? Yeah.
In my experience so far, I think I've been lucky placed on teams with people who were very open. There's definitely like corporate bureaucracy, so like you can shoot for the moon, but like it might never ship, or just like never be done. So that's something to keep in mind. Obviously, it's not like an individual project where it's like I want to build a spaceship, so I built a spaceship theoretically. Um, but yeah, I think that's why I'm also kind of navigating what kind of different work cultures I want to be in. I know IBM is definitely a huge company, and it definitely felt no tea, no shade. It just felt a little bit slower um, with processes. Still a great team though. But at Coinbase and at other startups, the culture is definitely faster because you have to ship stuff and push stuff out faster. And at startups, it just felt like a little too fast, and like one person wears too many hats. So at Coinbase so far, it's kind of like a good mix between both cultures, and I'm liking it so far. But again, I'm in my exploration phase, so who knows? Um,
So you mentioned about the culture. Could you share more about design culture in particular? Like, what are your thoughts on it? What might be like a better way to organize design teams than what you are experiencing right now? And anything deeper that I mean, you are in it, right? You are in the middle of it. So I'm sure there are a lot of subtleties which gets unnoticed, but since you're in it, you can kind of see it on a day-to-day basis.
mhm. I think one thing that I've learned, okay, listen, I don't have like 50 years of work experience. It's like I've had like two internships and two startup experiences. So take my stuff with a grain of salt, people. But so far working compared to like being at school, I think there's all this intimidation in working and like big tech in general, right? Everyone seems to know what's going on, but I feel like once I actually started working, as I realized many things, like no one really knows what's going on. Like everyone's trying their best. And so like as long as you bring your best foot forward and you're confident in your ideas, like definitely share that. I think I used to be really timid and I used to be like, I don't have enough experience. Like I'm too new to be able to share anything valuable, so I'd hold back a lot. And then I realized that's just like not doing anyone a favor, and that's not what they hired me to like do. So definitely become more confident in your ideas and just like try to be more out there. And I think depending on where you work as well, unfortunately, there's sometimes like corporate politics and stuff to navigate. I think that's very common in the corporate work culture. So um, I'm definitely a type of person that likes to sort of head down and do work, but there's also an aspect of like social culture within corporations that you kind of have to navigate to make you stand out more and things like that. Does that make sense? So that's something that I didn't exactly take too much note on going to the workplace. But now I like understand the importance as well. Um, even though that kind of sucks. But yeah, those are little design nuances that I guess about culture that I didn't exactly expect from schooling, transitioning from school into the workplace. In terms of others, there's probably a lot more. I'm just blanking a little bit.
Yeah. You keep on saying that you don't really have a lot of experience and that you might not have a lot to offer. I think that's the place you are coming from right now. But I really think that you doing the podcast like right now is like a very
Mm-hmm.
good timing because you are not too far in the journey to really forget about the transition you are going through right now. You know,
Mm-hmm. True.
like I have talked to a lot of people with 7 years, 10 years experience, and they they never talk about the transition phase because frankly they have forgotten about it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Or they are so far in the journey, they have no clue how they actually did things.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fair.
And
Okay, new
yeah,
perspective.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I would say I think you are getting started, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is the phase when nobody really wants to share what they are going through, kind of, you know?
Mhm.
And I don't really think that coming from a place of unsurety should stop you from speaking out. Does it make sense? Like,
Yeah,
it's fine if
sure.
you're not sure about things, but that does not mean you cannot share.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very open about my existential crises throughout the past several years.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Join the club.
oh yeah. Let's just shift the podcast and talk about this. Um,
Yeah. But yeah, no, you mentioned that twice, I think. So I was like, we should talk about that. That's all.
oh, we should existential crisis.
No, no, I mean,
Okay.
I have checked out your
Wait.
I have checked out your portfolio, right? And
Uh
it's
huh.
I think you are I would say underplaying yourself. That's all I can say. It was very good. I liked
Aw,
it.
thank you. Definitely the imposter syndrome thing as well in the workplace, which is also another nuance I guess I forgot to mention. Like a lot of staff designers in my company that I really admire and respect who have like several years of experience and leaps and bounds of knowledge more than me. Like they all have imposter syndrome, and it's just like they always say something that never goes away. I think you hear that quite a bit, and partially that's a little bit comforting, but partially it's like, no, like, what do you mean that never goes away? So I think that's also the part where definitely have a lot of confidence in your ability, and like even if like the worst thing that can happen is that you say something stupid, but they're not gonna like what are they gonna do? Like terminate you over it? I mean, unless you said something like immensely stupid, but it's like hard to picture how stupid you could be in a meeting for them to like fire you on the spot. Like don't be that extreme. I'm sure it does, but like don't go to that extreme. But if you have an idea that like you want to share, like go for it. Like people would just I think every time I've took the leap to share something and took initiative, people have always like come at it at a very educative sort of standpoint, and it's always been a good learning experience. So yeah.
That makes sense. So how did you deal with it? So I think right now you've already been to IBM, right? So now you are slightly experienced. But how was like the first 2 3 weeks in IBM? How was that like? Was it like very intimidating? You were kind of lost?
Yeah, because it was my first internship experience, and it was my first thing in UX and product. So I was definitely like, oh God, like I'm just a student and I have no idea what I can contribute, but I guess they hired me. But after speaking to the team and like, I think we had really solid managers who were very assuring, and every intern on the team pretty much felt the same way. So we're kind of we'd hop on calls together and sort of bond that way. And I had another intern, UX intern who I could rely on as well. So I think the team definitely made a difference. If you had a really cold team, then I don't know what to say to you. But my manager was very supportive and then kind of broke down the work in a way where I could understand and do it. So they definitely hire you for like the needs that they have. Like they need you to fulfill immediately. So you always have something to contribute, which is why you're there. So that's kind of how I started looking at it. Like if I wasn't needed, I wouldn't be here. So yeah, that helped.
I see. And how was the interview process like? What were you like freaking out? Like, oh my god, what is happening?
For IBM, honestly, it's definitely when I talk to other people that have interned at IBM, I had such a interesting interviewing experience as well. I think it's just such a big company that processes aren't exactly like people can go a little rogue sometimes. Um, it was really chill. Like I just had an interview with my manager and another engineer on the team, and then they just went through my portfolio, few behavioral questions, and then got a final interview, which is essentially the offer. So I wouldn't say that that's the normal process. I think for other jobs, it's definitely a bit more intensive. For example, um, at Coinbase, it was like a one-way interview type of thing. So you'd like record answers, and then like no one you wouldn't be talking to anybody, but you'd submit like a video submission type of thing. Um, and then they get back to you for an interview, and it was like a group interview with a bunch of managers. And I guess that's when they also kind of team match for you. And then during that interview, I essentially just presented two case studies. Like I did a whole presentation deck If you want to check more about interview process, like I definitely think I've learned a lot more applying this year than in previous years. Partially that taking the initiative to talk to mentors on ADP lists, I think that's really helped from like having people review my resume and portfolio and give me advice on how to present. And one of the key things they said was to create like a presentation slide deck of your projects instead of just going through your website, which I had done previously. And I think that really, really helped me in the interview process to not only collect my thoughts and present better, but also just it just makes you seem more organized, which is always good. Um, but yeah, so that's how the Coinbase went. I just one video interview, one final group interview, and then the last stage was just the offer. But then for other interviews I had for that I've gotten offers for, it was more just like phone screen, a interview with a project manager, with a manager, and then a group interview, and then like a final interview. So there's expect like 4 rounds minimum, depending like the bigger the company, I guess. Yeah.
I see. And let's say when you are making a slide deck, right? Do you like practice it as to time it precisely? Like, okay, I want, yeah.
Yeah. So I typically present 2 projects, and then depending, like they'll let you know how long the interview would be. So if it's 45 minutes, I'll take out 15, 20 for each case study, and then my whole entire run, just to make sure that I kind of capture every nuance that I want to. And then leave the rest for questions. But they're also sometimes they'll break it down for you. They'll be like, this is how the interview structure will go exactly. This is how much time you give. So it really is a case by case type of thing. But typically like 15, 20 minutes is what I aim for. Yeah.
15 minutes for both the case studies or like per case study?
Oh, for both, for both.
For both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not like a massive amount of time, but like enough.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, you also mentioned that you were trying to also understand what other kind of cultures you would want to engage in the future.
Hmm.
So, how do you go about that? Do you read online or do you like have you joined communities, talking to people?
So here's my existential thing that's going to be tied into this. Um, I definitely think I'm I enjoy a lot of creative work, and sometimes I feel like that could be a little bit lacking in terms of UX and product. Though I really like UX and product for its like how logical and practical it is, and how much research and everything is so intentional. So every design decision you made has to either be proven effective or has to have some kind of proven function, right? So like I like the the sort of practicality and how functional design has to be in that way, and like the challenge of making that creative and bringing more creative opportunities to it. So I enjoy that. But I think selfishly, I've done sort of arts growing up and in high school a lot that I sort of miss just making stupid, pretty things just for the sake of it being a stupid, pretty thing. Um, so I'm trying to find the balance between like yeah, I like product, but I also would like something more creative with it, or something that would give me enough time to sort of venture that on my own. Um, so I think currently at Coinbase, like I'm not doing free PR here. Don't worry, I don't work there right now, but like it might be also intern privilege. Like I get to sort of venture in illustration while also doing product work. So it's a good balance. I don't know if there's like a hybrid role I could potentially pursue in the future, which would involve both product and maybe something creative, like what I'm currently doing right now. I found that balance to be really enjoyable. But if I don't, like that's chill. Like I would like a company culture sort of similar to that of a startup, but have the security of a larger company. I know that's like everyone's dream, but you know what I mean? Like, I think at Coinbase, I like how it's definitely a lot more fast paced than IBM, and whatever I'm doing my internship will definitely get shipped in the near future. So that's something that I really enjoy in that kind of work setting. Um, and also just in startups, like the challenge of being a startup and the fun of like sort of being in the beginning stages of the process is definitely really exciting. But it also is, in my experience, has been very time consuming. So I don't really have time to sort of venture out my own life. outside of work. Um, yeah, so I'm just trying to find a place that's, fulfilling enough for me to do it as a full-time job, where I find it still challenging enough for me to do it, but also like with great people, whatever. But also I still get time to sort of live my life after work and be able to venture into and not be drained out so much from work where after work I won't be able to do any of the creatively fulfilling things that I really enjoy as well. If that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like basically I'm trying to say is I cannot be working 365 7 days a week, 40 hours. You know? Yeah.
So when you say you want time for things other than work, right? What are these things? Are you into skiing or are you into skydiving? Are you into skating? What is it?
I
Like I really
Man, you're
enjoy
pulling out
ice
so many
skating actually.
exciting. Oh really? That's so cool. Wait, do you like ice skate on the regular, like
No, no, no.
every week?
Like once a year. That's it.
That's awesome. I haven't ice skated in so long. Anyways, I'll try, but that's cool. Let me know how that goes. Um, I would love to skydive, but no, it's not a hobby of mine, unfortunately. I really like photography work currently, and I'm really interested in sort of like the intersection between VR, AR, and fine art in general. So doing that a lot, shooting friends for fun, and doing design work that are a little bit non-practical just for fun. Um, if you would like to check that out, it's on my Instagram. Anna the
I'll link
Asgaraly.
yeah, I'll link that also.
Thank you. Just came to plug. Um, but yeah, that's sort of the stuff I like to do. Just honestly, anything creative. I've also helped out, like recent years, I've helped out a friend sort of doing production design on film sets and music videos. So that's been really fun. I think I just like interacting with other people who do their own niche creative work, and that I find really fulfilling. So whatever that allows me time to kind of indulge in those things, I really appreciate. And so far, like my internship has been structured in a way where I'm able to do that. So honestly, it's just trying to find this similar balance anywhere else. I sort of just have a checklist of things that mean a lot to me in work. So any place that can kind of hit aspects of that checklist, like I don't really care where I work. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Hmm. You know, the funny part about what you just said is that I asked you what do you want to do apart from work, and it kind
Oh
of
damn. See, thanks for the reminder. I went rogue. Um,
that's fine. But I think you don't consider photography work. I think that's what I got out of it. It's like something you do for fun, isn't it?
yeah. To me, I enjoy doing a lot.
You know, listening to you, I really think that in a couple of years you can. I don't know how or if you would do it or not, but you can like go out there and start a studio, and you can do everything. You can do UX, UI, you can do photography, you can do illustration. Like if it's your own studio, right? You can do whatever you want.
I know graduates from my program have definitely did their own venture doing that. That's definitely if I ever am in the vibes to start a studio, sure. Right now, I'm just trying to. Right now, I'm trying to have people tell me what to do, and I'll do my best, and then do my own thing. But yeah, sorry if you want to roll back more into product. Happy to do that always, and this is supposed to be like a dive deep into product session. I don't know if anyone wants to hear about my photography ventures. Um,
You never know, right? You like in the coming years, all of these different things can come together, and it will be something new. We don't know that yet.
I don't know. I definitely think anyone who's interested in diving into UX and product is definitely a field that gives you a lot of freedom, like freedom of time, freedom of remote work, and like just there's a lot of like sort of cross, I guess, cross like intersecting work within product that can like involve many disciplines as well. So it's definitely an exciting opportunity for those that are interested. And I hope nothing I said turned you off. If that's something you're excited to get into, definitely pursue it, and feel free to reach out to me if you need help or anything like that. Always around.
How was your experience on ADP list?
Yeah, it was great. I kind of came across it on LinkedIn and then thought I'd try it out. And then it's just so nice to reach out to people who work at companies that, I'm interested in or work in fields um, that I'm interested in with a lot more experience. So talking to them, kind of navigating where I want to take my career and also just getting feedback from like an employer sort of standpoint was really, really helpful. And yeah, they gave me a lot of insights that like actually translated into, like results, um, getting more offers this year compared to other years. So definitely really appreciate that. It's a free platform, so again, I'm not paid to do this, but I would highly recommend everyone to go on there and check it out.
Yeah, even I've been talking to a lot of folks from ADP list recently, and last week I was talking to a product designer from LinkedIn, right? And he works on the trust team on LinkedIn, and yeah, we're doing a podcast on 26th, so that is cool.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. Like it's so interesting to see what people work on in the large companies in general. Because like when you think about people who work at Google, it's like what do you work on at Google? Google's like so massive, you know. So it's interesting to get to like niche insider details. Um, and yeah, also just to get some more clarity. Sometimes it's the magic of seeing the field from as an outsider can sort of, um, I guess, shadow some things that some concerns that could potentially come up when you're in it. So it's good to talk to people that are in it to let you know before you make the transition or whatever. So
And that is one of the things I found very interesting about what I do on this podcast. It's like every week I'm talking to two to three people from very diverse backgrounds, and it's like I'm living like seven lives every month.
yeah, that's so cool. I was gonna say like hosting a podcast must seem like very fun if you find like interacting with people very fulfilling. Like, is it a very
Yeah, I
fulfilling
love
job
it.
for
I,
you?
I think you can see how much I love it actually.
I can. Yeah, I know you're like all
Yeah.
suited up and everything. Like, I really appreciate it. Yeah.
No, no, I really think like we do product work to keep the whole thing going. So we do product and we do cloud and we do podcast just because I don't know, we find it extremely fun. And over the last, we started the whole thing in the pandemic in 2020 because we found a very interesting insight. We were looking at the Zoom stock, and the Zoom stock was zooming in a lot, like it was going up way too much. And our conclusion was, more and more people will be open to join us on a video call, right? So we were like, okay, what can we do with that? And the craziest idea was, oh, how about we just record the video call and make a podcast out of it? So that's
Yeah,
what we got out of it. I'm like, yeah, okay,
that's
this,
awesome.
this is fun.
And there's nothing people like doing than talking about themselves. Speaking personally, narcissism. So yeah, I love that here.
And one insight that a lot of guests who come on the show share is that even they don't think about what they do on a regular basis. They just do their thing and get on with their lives. Yeah, so like the podcast serves as like this retrospective session for like an hour or so. And they're like, oh, I did not know I did that because of that funny thing when I did it in my childhood. Yeah, yeah.
It's cool. It can be like kind of retrospective in a way. Yeah,
So let's say we discussed about your design process and how you got here, right? Do you think there is something which you found was so unique in your process, which when you are engaging in different activities, some activities are nothing, but some of them are so unique and so impactful they kind of tilt the direction of your life. Like, oh, I did not even
yeah,
know. Right.
yeah. I feel like I've had this conversation with somebody before, but like, let me think. Is there anything in particular instances in your life? Like, I'm trying to think. Well,
So I have a lot of instances now because I do the podcast and I'm trying to learn from a lot of people. But I started the company Sunday Pajamas right out of college. I was still in third year of my grad grad course, and I was using Facebook and Instagram a lot, and I was like, you know what, I should do something about this. And I was not very happy up with the way things were going at the time. You mentioned existential crisis, and I'm like, I know what you're saying. Right? I'm like, I'm learning a lot of things in college, but it's not very fulfilling. So how about I take on a difficult challenge on my own? So I'm like, oh, let's start a design studio. Don't do that, but I did that. It was just too tough in the beginning. That's all. But well, here we are talking about it, so I think it turned out fine.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Trying to think of something recent. I'm not gonna pull out like childhood stuff, or maybe I will. I think recent years, there was one time where I had made this sort of editorial magazine for school and did like a shoot in it. Which is for fun. It was just like a photography thing that I wanted to do. And I posted it just on Instagram. And then through that, like a friend of a friend had reached out to do like production design opportunities and like art direction work on music videos and film. And since then, like I've been involved in that creative scene for like almost a year now, which is super cool. So that's just like a tiny decision that I made that like led to somewhere. And also just I guess in high school, um, I knew younger that I always really liked art, and then I know in middle school um like the Raspberry Pi and Arduino were like super hot, and like Raspberry Pi just came out. Like my tech teacher was kind of like really hands on with all that stuff, and like really got me into technology and like doing Arduino stuff for the science fair. So I got really interested into tech because of that teacher because of his class at middle school, and then that sort of helped me really want to apply to this high school program called cyber arts, which is an intersection between tech and art, like two things I really liked. And then that I was introduced to graphic design, and I was like, whoa, like, this is kind of cool. And then after that, it made me like, study this as a bachelor's degree. So here I am. Um, yeah, kind of interesting. I'm sure there's more nuanced moments, but it's really interesting how like, especially like in our most unintentional moments, like stuff we don't think too hard on is like when you look back on it could be, like everything started from this point. I just did a little leap and that's where that happened. Yeah. I'm trying to see where my next leap would be. Maybe this. Maybe this podcast will lead to the next 3 years of my life.
I wish you all the best. I really hope so. I would feel very nice. That would be an achievement. Like seriously,
That would be.
that would be so cool, man. Seriously, that was so cool.
Okay. Manifesting. Manifesting. Okay.
We are adding all the links in the description. You never know.
Hey, okay. Okay.
Yeah. But you, so because you shared this, I would like to add one small detail. Okay. So once I started this whole design studio thing, whatever that was, uh, I kind of became conscious about putting ideas out there, not quite understanding or knowing what those ideas will become into in the future. So, like for example, this podcast, right? I've been talking about doing a podcast since 2017 now, right? And just for fun, I would just start interviewing all my friends around me, my parents, everyone, pretending to do a podcast, not knowing where it will, what will happen out of it. And then I kind of became conscious of conducting a lot of such small, funny experiments, like the ice skating thing and everything else I'm doing right now. So it was more like a conscious leap of faith with an absolute understanding that it's just gonna fail 100%. But who cares? Let's just do it anyway.
Okay.
Right.
I think
To
that's
the point.
honestly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Go on.
Sorry.
No,
No,
it's fine.
go
Tell me.
ahead.
Okay.
Let's not do
To the
this. Go
point.
ahead.
Yeah. To the point where we ended up building our own product. In we start the podcast. We get on a podcast session with this person called Katie. She was a product manager at the time in Microsoft, okay, in California. And she's like, you know what? Making product is not that difficult. Like if I can do it, anyone can do it. So we hear that. I mean, okay, that makes sense, Okay. And then 2, 3 months later, we are like, you know what? How about we try to build a product? Because Katie said so. Right? So we start building a product out of nowhere. And in 3 months of time, we literally build enough and get enough customers to apply to Y Combinator. Right.
Awesome. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So, it's like moments like this when you can just take a leap of faith with no expectation at all, and then you end up talking to Anna on the podcast somehow. You know.
I'm not sure that's the highlight of your career right now, but sure, I'm
No, I'm
honored.
I'm having fun. So
Um,
I think the highlight of my career is that I'm having fun. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was definitely, it's interesting. I was talking to a friend yesterday about like the whole leap of faith moment. Like, there's so many friends in my life that I really respect and admire, and it's all because they took like a leap of faith to move to a new city or do a new thing that's more challenging for themselves or venture into a hobby that is maybe so left field from like what they would normally do, but it was intriguing and you did it, and then it turned out to be the most rewarding thing. So oftentimes, like, that's not something that I'm trying to do more as well. Just there's so many things I'm interested in, and there's nothing really stopping me except me, and obviously perhaps finances from like engaging in those hobbies or potential points of interest. So yeah, if you want to take a leap of faith, and anyone who's saying wants to take a leap of faith into product, um, well, maybe talk to people on ADP list first. Okay, okay. Has there been any like very specific product questions that you've gotten on your podcast that you had wished maybe for me to answer instead of going rogue?
yeah. So I would say the one thing that I was able to gauge, talking to product managers and designers from LinkedIn and Microsoft, is that they have a very large corpus of data, like research data that the company does on its customers and products. So it and all the decision making process and the process in the teams are very data driven. Like it's not really gut feeling. So the one question that I keep on asking over and over again is, first of all, how do you collect all that data? But in a big company, it's already there, for example. So if it's already there, right, how do you go from taking all the data into consideration and then actually making a decision?
Yeah, so I think I can give an example of my intern project so far. So like I'm doing some illustration work. So for some I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say the details, but like for some parts of the application, and there's already like for the Coinbase wallet team, but I'm on the design systems team. Sorry for clarification. So my opportunity, I get to do sort of documentation, a lot of product thinking for the design system team, while also being able to be involved with the illustration team to create stuff for the Coinbase wallet team. If that makes sense. Um, so with the existing illustration teams, they've already collected like, a lot of data by testing their illustrations and see like how they work and how they interact with the users, I guess. And so there's certain like nuances of, for example, does this color help? Like, are people alarmed by this color? And they would do very extensive user testing sessions on like the most nuanced and specific things within the product. So it's really interesting when you're sort of building out an illustration and people, you have staff designers telling you, hey, we chose these colors for this reason and it's been tested by this, and this were our results. And there's entire like pages of documentation that you can reference back to on like varied user testing sessions and like how to incorporate that into your current workflow. So, for example, like even tone of voice, what kind of tone of voice people prefer more, what sort of illustration style, like how expressive or how functional it needs to be. Um, and there's like multiple guidelines, for example, that I'm working on how to use that, and that translates to different aspects of the product as well. And I know for my project specifically, I'm doing again in that realm, and it'll be tested afterwards to see. We'll be testing the content, testing the tone, testing the how users feel about it and stuff, and then create hypotheses and see if they validate those. So there's a lot of testing, and it's really great to be more intentional with your design work, but it's also challenging to, for example, have a space as interesting as Web3 and crypto and trying to be, I guess more Web3 and future forward, but like how do you also be very practical at the same time, like how do you be innovative while also basing yourself in like functionality and reality of what users want. So it's an interesting challenge, but yeah.
So how does this decision making happen? Is it like a product manager who decides, or is it more of a like a group thinking decision making process?
In my experience so far, it's been pretty group like you maybe like a manager would maybe there's like an existing. I think Coinbase has been long-standing enough that we so far you tackle problems that already exist. So you look at a problem, you create sort of whatever hypotheses it is, and then create the thing that you are hypothetically wanting to address. And then you discuss with your team along the way, obviously, and then afterwards or throughout the process, you test with a bunch of users that you want to target, and then sort of collect your data and present it at the end. So it's a very um, it's not always this wrapped up with a pretty bow type of process. I think every company has their own process, and every project can be like it could be like a project by project basis, but it's usually like that. If you have any concerns or questions, we have teams of user researchers to go to, and they're always down to like help you out, and they're very fast and very great. So, I'm testing a lot of nuanced things that are really interesting right now in my intern project. I'm super excited to hear back on, how the decisions I made actually impacted the user, and how to change from there.
Yeah. So are a lot of outcomes like pre-decided? Like all the success matrices are given, with this project and with this workflow of design, we want to achieve exactly this kind of success matrices. Is it like that intentional, or it kind of is decided towards the end of the whole design cycle?
It's definitely intentional. I think with any company, it's like they're not going to put money and budget into something if there isn't going to be a result that they want, obviously. So there's, in the beginning of each quarter, there will be like a bunch of, I think for most companies, there's like a bunch of goals that you want to hit by the end of each quarter, and that goal will translate into more detailed projects that you work on. And, like how does those goals and, what if it, even if it's monetary or whatever it is, translate into actual stuff into the product that you can work on. So I think with those goals in mind, um, of like ideas of what hitting success would be in mind, you then lead your project, conduct your project in that manner. It's also interesting. I know at Coinbase, there's sort of like success meter. So yeah, there's like a success point that you want to hit, like that goal, but achieving maybe a percentage of that is considered success. So by the end of the quarter, so a lot of success metrics definitely defined by managers, I guess.
So this is communicated with the team at the beginning of every quarter. Yes.
Yeah, I guess there's like from leadership on to every sort of smaller people on the team, like it's just larger goals turn into smaller goals and smaller goals that people can handle. So
And does this like add to the pressure of it, like not like the thought of not being able to hit the goal when you are, let's say, just getting started?
yeah, I mean I'm an intern right now, so I don't feel, for example, maybe as much pressure as maybe more the director designers, but also I think companies are structured in a way where they understand how their team has been functioning so far. And there's always like, wanting to push your team further, but also being very realistic with what your team can achieve in this quarter, and like what based on what they have been achieving so far, and also based on current economic climates and, budget, et cetera, et cetera. So, they're not unreasonable people where they're going to give you unrealistic things. There's also like I guess, an interesting tension between like wanting to push a little bit more forward, but also being realistic. And I think that's translated throughout the org of, you know, obviously we want to push ourselves and do go above and beyond and, be very proud of forward, but also, how do we avoid sort of burnout and just like being too unrealistic where we don't achieve anything by the end of the quarter. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. And are the reports like shared per quarter? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so it's divided by teams. So like on my team, there's like larger all hands meetings, specifically in the design systems or design foundations team, and then you get, you know, reports on what happened this quarter, what we did well, what we didn't, what to work on, etc. And then there's also larger all of Coinbase sort of breakdowns at the end of the quarter, what we did well, what we didn't. It's really retrospective and really nice, and I like that kind of transparency. Um, yeah.
I see. Is there anything which is very unique about Coinbase that you noticed and you would like to share?
Um, yeah, so I told all my coworkers this. Like, I kind of went to Coinbase very intimidated because I would not consider myself a crypto bro. And, like, from a sort of media perception, it seemed like it was very crypto bro culture. And, I think it's an exciting space. And, I'm really interested in Web3 and all that. And I even sort of dived into my thesis in Web3. So I was like, what better way to learn than like be in it? But I was definitely intimidated. But then going into it and working on like the team that I am, people are so lovely. Like there's like the sweetest people I've ever had the honor to work with. Um, and like while they're also very sweet, they're also definitely very realistic. Like very great managers and coworkers to work with. They're all super talented and all like very insightful. So I'm learning so much. I think it's interesting in Coinbase that like the Fang to Coinbase pipeline, like there's so many people that have worked at like 9 years at Google or like Airbnb, Lyft, whatever, and they suddenly came to Coinbase for a new challenge. And so there's definitely like a lot of insight and learning and growth that can happen very quickly just by being around the people that you're around every single day. Um, and also just like working on exciting new things that like sort of Coinbase, I would think of as a company, it's sort of leading the crypto Web3s or trying to Web3 space right now. And I think it's exciting to be working on projects that are very, future forward and that could potentially become a very key aspect of our future. I don't know. It's uncertain, but it's interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah. Even I would say Web3 markets right now are kind of dicey.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's my other existential thing. Like the volatility of an industry, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But I think I definitely lucked out on the team and people I'm with. I know there's definitely an interesting reputation that Coinbase has. And I definitely like, I see it and I'm like, ooh, is this gonna be a pain in the ass to join and I'm gonna have a miserable time. But it's been nothing like that so far, but I also think I've just gotten very lucky with the teams I've been placed on in my career. So
I see. So I would like to say, I would like to actually ask one last question,
for sure.
right? So I will not ask you, how you see yourself in 10 years or something. Let's say Coinbase is going on. So what other ideas you think, you want to explore going? Like you definitely mentioned photography, but apart from that, is it like is something else on the horizon that, you are very excited about?
Yeah, I know I've mentioned Coinbase a lot, but that's just because it's my current job, so I can speak to it the most. But I mentioned previously that, I have a criteria of things that make me fulfilled and make me happy in terms of balancing my life and work. And I think wherever place next hits those criterias, I will be there. It's not like as serious of a thing um for me. I know a lot of people are super passionate about the crypto space and they want their rest of their life to be in that industry, but I'm sort of very open. I'm trying to navigate and see what space would be more appropriate for me. Um, but in terms of more creative work, I think definitely trying to pursue more creative work and putting more time to it. I'm currently trying to wrap up a thesis thing that I've shot a couple months ago. Hopefully I'll be able to put that out there soon. So that would be something on the horizon that I'm really, really excited about. Um, and just trying to vibe out. I don't know, just trying to figure out who I am more. I think there's this one book that I've been reading that I've been recommending to every bitch and their mom. It's called Job. Sorry, let's just cut those, bleep those out. By David Graeber. Sorry if I'm butchering the name, but I highly recommend everyone to read that book. And I think it's gotten me to be very reflective and more intentional about how I want to pursue my career and take my next few years of my life, I guess, until I'm 30. I'm not saying that your life ends at 30, but I would like to have more clarity by 30 personally. Um, yeah. So just in the stage of experimentation and trying to figure it out, being more intentional with how I live and carry on my life. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, if you are open to it, right, we can do a check-in session sometime later.
Oh God, like 8 years from now when I'm 30? That should be
Not
kind of
not
fun.
8 years, but like sooner than that. Yeah, maybe next year or something like that.
Hey, always down. Well, thank you so much for having me.
How was it for you?
This has been great. I mean, there's nothing else to do more than talk about myself out of straight fucking narcissism. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about myself for an hour. I don't know how insightful this was specifically in product, but I'm always down to have people reach out to me specifically in UX and product. If you're a student looking for help, I really like helping people, so I'm always around. I'll help you the best I can. Um, and thank you so much for just like being a great host and listening to me rant and ramble. I wish you all the best with this podcast. It's super awesome and exciting stuff that you're doing. So we'll have to check in with you 2 years from now, see first of all how your ice skating is going, and seeing how this is
Yeah,
going. So
definitely, definitely. I would
yeah,
say it was fun talking to you.
thank you. Likewise.